Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. For over a decade, the name Cubie Seegobin has been synonymous with the management of global track and field stars. His most high-profile clients, including former American 400-meter world record holder Harry Butch Reynolds and Jamaica's 2011 100-meter world champion Yohan Blake. Cubie joins us now to talk all things track and field. Cubie, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. We've had you live in the studio before, and we've also spoken to you on Zoom and Skype and so on. So this is not your first appearance on the SportsMax Zone. Always great to have you on, sir.
Thank you, Lance. Yeah, the last time I was in studio with you.
Yeah, I remember that well, with your fancy Mercedes-Benz parked outside.
Oh my!
Not really. I never had a Mercedes.
Was it a BMW then?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay, yes. I'm sorry about that, sir. Anyway.
No problem. No problem.
All right. I guess the biggest story or the biggest talking point regarding Cubie Seegobin at the moment is your separation from Yohan Blake. You had been guiding this sprinter's career since his teenage years and seen him go to world-class levels, 9.69 seconds. Only Usain Bolt has run faster. Can you talk to us about the separation?
Well, it was basically a separation of philosophical differences, and I felt strongly in one direction. He felt strongly in one direction, and it was that was it. There was nothing, no animosity or anything about it. We just felt strongly about the direction that he wanted to go, and people outgrow each other, and so it was one of those things where, I felt a certain way and he felt a certain way, and that's it. We're still amicably friends. I mean, I still am dealing with his contracts. I mean, I'm not doing his day-to-day work or his meets, but, we're there.
Yeah,
that's it.
Can you be a little bit more specific, Cubie, when you say going in different directions? Can you just give us a little more information about, the bottom line?
No, well, there wasn't really any bottom line or anything more specific. I mean, after the Olympics, I felt a certain way about where we should be going, his direction, and he felt a certain way. And, that was basically it. Really, it was nothing bigger than that, to be honest. People outgrow each other, and, that's basically it. Seriously. There's really nothing more hidden behind the scenes.
Yeah. It was about 7 or 8 years ago, wasn't it, that he had a career-threatening hamstring injury. It was a pretty severe hamstring rupture. His career hasn't quite been the same since that. How difficult was that period?
Well, it was a difficult period, 2013, and moving forward. But we progressed, steadily we progressed and we progressed. But I think it had a lot to do with Yohan's maturing and wanting to change coaches, and that was it. Basically, I'm just a manager. Everybody says to me, "Well, you should have a say in this and say in that." But Yohan is a grown adult, and he can make his own decisions.
Yes,
and I can give my opinion, and that's it.
Yeah, how difficult is your job on a daily basis? Because, you just said something, I'm just a manager, but being a manager involves a lot of behind the scenes work, a lot of hard work that many people don't ever find out about. So can you just tell us a bit about, what your role really is and what goes into being the manager of some of the best athletes?
Thank you for that question. It's very important because people think it's so easy to do.
But you said that, Cubie, and that's why I wanted to stop you and let you tell us the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a daily thing. It's a daily babysitting job. I mean, of dealing with not only the on-the-track activities, but off-the-track activities. And, the problem you have with many of these athletes is you have everybody in their ears telling them different things, and you have a plan and people want to disrupt your plan. I mean, I am just a manager. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a coach. I just am good at what I do, depending on what you give me to work with. But on a daily basis, I deal with the meets, I deal with the contracts, I deal with the appearances, I deal with the interviews. I mean, if SportsMax calls me and says, "Hey, can we have Yohan?" I deal with that. I go back to Yohan. He says no. He says yes, or whatever. Any of my clients. But it's a daily routine. I mean, we just don't appear in Europe, or we just don't appear in a meet in the Caribbean or any part of the world. You have to work at it.
Yeah, when these situations arise with athletes, it must be exhausting. how do you bounce back and keep going? Because you are one of the most reputable managers when it comes to track and field. Everybody knows who you are. I was actually very excited to interview you today based on the body of work that you've done before. What keeps you going?
It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to be a manager and to lay out a plan and be successful at it. What keeps me going is the young athletes. I mean, I have a few very young athletes that are exciting now, but basically, here's the thing. I do this on a daily basis. I understand the sport. I'm the architect of the sport from the 80s. I've been involved from 1978. I know what's happening. What happens here is a lot of the people who are involved do not know what's happening in the sport. They don't deal with it on a daily basis. And that's the frustrating thing, because they manipulate and they give wrong information to the athletes and the young athletes coming out and the young coaches. And that's the frustrating thing, because everybody thinks there's so much money involved. And most of the time, most of the managers are losing money. We're losing money. Last year, for instance, we carried the sport. The athletes, the managers, and some of the coaches carried the sport. And then we invested our money. We spent our money to go to whatever meets were available. And then we had to go chase down our money from the organizers. And, before COVID, the sport was already hemorrhaging. Now with COVID, it's very difficult for the organizers to get sponsors or for athletes to get sponsors. The shoe companies are the major sponsors of most of the athletes. And, this is a major problem. And people do not understand this. They just think that, I wish some of them would tune into CNN or SportsMax or MSNBC and see what's happening in the world, because they have no idea what's happening in the world from a financial or economical basis.
Yeah, I think my first face-to-face meeting with you, Cubie, would have been at probably one of those Carifta games staged in Trinidad or Barbados many years ago. How much work do you do with regard to scouting athletes, seeing the top juniors in the Caribbean and trying to pull them into a professional setup?
Well, to be honest, I don't scout and I don't, try to pull young athletes. I've basically been working in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years exclusively with Jamaicans and 1 and 2 Trinidadians. It's become so competitive. I mean, at one time I represented some of the best Americans, and then it became so competitive and so much red tape that I had some Jamaican athletes and I was able to corner the market in the beginning. Now there's so many managers in Jamaica and, there's so many athletes. And I sit back and I have what I call my farm team, and I get some of the good young athletes because of my reputation. And, I work with them. Look, Lance, you cannot work with 20 or 25 or 30 athletes. The best thing is to work with 10 or 15 athletes. And out of that, maybe you have 6 or 7 that are good athletes. People that become just a name on somebody's client list, it's crazy because they're never going to get in a meet. There's only 9 lanes on a track, Lance, and you have to really be able to tell an organizer why you deserve one of those lanes. And that is the big problem, because athletes, just believe they deserve it of a lane, and you have to look at the world and see where you are in the world. I tell athletes when they say, well, why am I not in the meet? I said, well, where are you on the world list? Where are you on the world rankings? And why do you think you should be ahead of this athlete in a meet or not?
You mentioned earlier on to Mariah that you're just a manager, and there are certain decisions that athletes will make on their own. When the coaching change surfaced for Yohan Blake to move from Glenn Mills, who had taken him to the levels that he reached in his pinnacle years, how did you assess that period? And how much agreement or disagreement did you have with that departure from the Glenn Mills setup for Yohan Blake?
Well, I listened to the issue and I gave my opinion to Yohan, and obviously, he makes the final decision. I mean, I had this question up to last week, people saying, well, why didn't I intervene? Why didn't I pressure Yohan? Of course, I give him my opinion, but at the end of the day, he has to be comfortable and he has to make the decision that he wanted to make or wants to make.
Sounds as if your opinion or your recommendation was for him to stay with Glenn?
I would have preferred that, yes, of course.
All right, Cubie, we know that you have in the past few years been critical of the J3As with their administration on how they have handled certain things regarding the athletes. What's your relationship like with the various governing bodies and even the Olympic associations? Is that a problematic area for you?
No, I mean, you know, it is what it is. I have to work with the J3A, so I'm mending my relationship with Gart Gale. We've never really had a bad relationship. I mean, I've known Gart and some of those people there for decades, as you said. I just voiced my opinion. I just think that the sport has left, you know, some of the people that are there behind. I mean, you know, it's not only in athletics, Lance, as you know, it's in cricket, it's in soccer, it's in everything. I mean, some of the sport has just progressed so much, and we have stayed in the dark ages to an extent. I mean, the JOA, I mean, well, what can I say? What do you want me to say? I mean, it's embarrassing, some of the decisions they've made, and it's actually petty, in my opinion. I mean, on a world basis, I mean, even with this latest bobsled issue, it's beyond me. I mean, you know, it's just embarrassing to have this kind of nonsense go on a world stage, and it's petty in my sense. You know, I mean, I don't know the particulars. I think I do know some of them, but the whole thing with Gart Gale not getting a credential, the president of the J3As and our biggest you know, sport in the Olympics. And then now with the bobsled team, with a physiotherapist, it's a fantastic young lady. I mean, she has worked tirelessly helping Jamaican athletes, not only in bobsled, but in athletics. And, you know, it's a global thing. I mean, I remember meeting her for the first time at the Commonwealth Games, and she helped us tremendously at no pay. I mean, it's unbelievable that this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. Do you find, Cubie, that the level of administration on the Caribbean landscape is inferior to the ones up north, say in North America, where you have a lot of athletes as well?
Well, I don't want to say inferior. I would prefer to say that it's, you know, we need to update our knowledge on things. I think sometimes people get a little authority and it goes to their head, you know, and it just I don't understand why this happens in the Caribbean all the time. I mean, even growing up as a kid, you know, this was the kind of stuff that went on. You know, you get a little authority, a little title, and you just think that, oh my God, you know, you're the best, and you're actually a big fish in a little bowl.
Yeah, and then it begs the overarching question: are you concerned about the future of Jamaica's track and field program?
Personally, yes. Whether, you know, on a nation basis, I don't know what other people think. I personally am. I think we need to stress more the education of the athletes. I mean, this is a major part of that. I think we need to stress more of them managing their money better, you know, in a sense, and you know, more knowledgeable. I tend to, I would say 80% of my speech to athletes is to go to school, to have something to fall back on after you know, athletics is over. I mean, I'm a product of education, and you know, it's a major issue, because I think most of the athletes, you know, when they finish running, they stay around too long because they have nothing to go to. They don't plan for the future. They don't have a decent education because it's all about running. And I think that the school system in Jamaica needs to stress more about education. And then, you know, some of the managers that are handling them need to try at the higher level to put away their money and to do better for them financially.
Yeah, Cubie, we want to talk a little bit more about that, a good topic that you just hit. We are going to a short break, and we'll be back in a moment. Cubie Seegobin, top manager of outstanding global athletes in track and field. Back with more on The Zone after this. Back on the SportsMax Zone, talking with renowned track and field manager Cubie Seegobin, and lots of topics we have covered already. Cubie grew up in Ghana. He left Ghana as a 16-year-old and has done really well for himself as a global track and field manager. You were touching, Cubie, before we went to break, on the importance of education and ensuring that these athletes solidify their headspace for various reasons, not only if their careers get cut short because of injuries and so on, but what happens after? You have a BA in communications and MBA in business management. What motivated you to go through the college and university experience in the way that you did? And how much of a recommendation would you put to the athletes that you're now talking to?
Well, I mean, that's a long story and a very interesting story how I end up managing Jamaican athletes. I think you know that. I think I went off to university to study political science and sociology. It's a very, very interesting story. And then I, of course, had a roommate that came from the 72 Olympics. And because, you know, he was limited in what he knew about his work and his prospect, I had to change my whole life and to help him facilitate some of the things he was trying to do. And that's why I'm so loyal to Jamaica and the Jamaican athletes and the Jamaica school program. But I think, personally, Lance, I think, look, the education thing, it's the most important thing, I think, with athletes. I think, you know, everybody talks about athletics, but, you know, what's the percentage of athletes that are making it, Lance? Maybe 10% of athletes? And look how many people are talking about going pro.
Or less.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I'm saying. And you have to have something to fall back on. And I preach it to them all the time. I say, hey, you know, you need to, even if you take private lessons, but everybody's looking and they're getting misinformation about, you know, being a pro and how much money to be made. Lance, the money is so cut back now. I mean, the Diamond League that we just recently have, the prize money is cut in half. People don't notice. The athletes don't notice. Some of the coaches don't notice, but they sell a pig in a bag that, hey, turn pro, you're going to get a contract, you're going to make so much money. Lance, maybe 1% of them make it and make the big money.
How much do you retain your personal relationships with athletes who you have managed before? At the top of the segment, we spoke about you being manager of Harry Butch Reynolds, who was a former world record holder over 400 meters for the United States. He's 57 years old now, Butch Reynolds. Are you still in touch with him as one of your biggest clients ever?
No, I'm in touch with Ronaldo Nehemiah, who I think was one of my biggest clients. And I mean, it's amazing that you named those names because they're very strategic in my career. But I mean, I had Charles Austin, I had Raymond Stewart, I had Beverly McDonald, Sandy Richards. Charles Austin was Olympic champion, world champion, American record holder, Olympic champion. But Harry Butch Reynolds was, you know, I was able to get in the room with Nebiola and get, you know, I was able to put that meeting together between Harry Butch Reynolds and Nebiola when nobody could. Nehemiah, you know, he was the first to sign a professional endorsement contract as an athlete, and then he went off to football and came back to track and field. And I had him from 16 years too. And we remain friends to this day, you know, and he's now a manager, and every so often we talk because, you know, he represents Shakira Richardson. And, you know, yes. He called me and we talked about, you know, the whole image thing. And, you know, he was talking to me about competing against the Jamaicans and, you know, how should he handle it and everything, you know. And we had a long conversation about that, to be honest, you know. So, yeah, I mean, most of my athletes, I talk to Sandy. She messages me all the time, Sandy Richards. You know, as much as we can stay in touch, we stay in touch. Ever so often, if there's a track meet or they want to know something, they'll message me and ask me what's going on, Q, or something like that.
Yeah.
Know?
You touched on an interesting name just now, Cubie. Shakira Richardson took the world by storm last year with her social media presence and then her rather tame performances on the track. Your thoughts on her future and her bid to challenge the Jamaican sprint group?
Well, I mean, sometimes, you know, athletes get distracted. I mean, I am yet to be proven to see how well she is or how good she is. I mean, she's run sometimes, but, you know, 1 time or 2 time is not the important thing. It's how consistent you are. And I always knew that the Jamaicans would get the better of her, you know, because I think they're more disciplined when it comes to that kind of rivalry. And I think, you know, Richardson, as talented as she is, you know, as I was saying to her manager, she just need to leave the off the track, you know, stuff alone and focus on her on the track competition.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce and more recently Elaine Thompson here leaving the MVP setup? Well, Shelly-Ann has shown that she's holding her own, more than holding her own, since leaving MVP. Tom Sahira now is beginning her life without MVP. How do you see her 2022 season in a new coaching setup and her future?
Well, it's very interesting, but I've never met Elaine, to be honest. Officially, I've never met Elaine. Shelly I've met, but I'm not very close with them. Elaine, they're both super talents. I mean, it's very super talents, and I don't know the intricacies of why either of them left MVP. But my philosophy, as you asked me earlier, is if something isn't broke, why fix it? Just try to tweak it and move on. But like I said, athletes outgrow coaches, they outgrow managers, and the decisions that they make, it's their decision to make. One of the funny things about it, Lance, is I never sign a contract with any athlete. I have a one-page agreement of what they pay me. And if today or tomorrow they wake up and they say, hey, Cubie, we're not happy, or I'm not happy, they can go their way. I seriously believe in not holding an athlete to a manager or to a contract. As long as I have an agreement in what you pay me that I make you, it's fine with me.
Yeah, and on that note, are you working on any new athletes, anything new that we can look forward to? And also, what are you doing to help Jamaica's track and field, especially in the capacity that you hold and the fact that you have so much experience?
Well, it's a good question. I have a combination of some very young athletes. I'll give you two names, and some old athletes. In the men's section, I have Javier Brown, who was the boys and girl athlete, I would say, of the year. I have Antonio Watson, who I think is going to be a very, very big deal. And I have Rashid Dreyer and Demish Gay. In the women, I have Ashanti Moore and Cheyenne Solomon. And then I have Rhonda White and Elaine Thompson. So I have a nice combination of some young athletes that I'm motivated to work with and bring further to the top.
You mentioned
as far as what I've done. I mean, I don't know if you know, I was the person that started the whole high school thing with the equipment and the uniforms and so on. And I'm very much involved in that program, helping one particular shoe company.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot of that, and we're trying to help a lot of the country schools and the local schools. But again, here is the problem with that. You help a school, and then they think they get bigger than life, and they think the grass is greener somewhere else, and they move on. It's all about education and information. It's so much bad information out there.
Mm. You mentioned earlier on, Cubie, that the track and field landscape, I guess probably hampered as well by the COVID-19 pandemic, is not as rosy as a lot of people figure looking on from the outside. How worried are you that track and field as a sport will continue to grow, or do you see track and field hitting a snag? I know the World Athletics president, Sebastian Coe, did suggest that the post-Usain Bolt era could be a little problematic. Your thoughts on that and the future of the sport?
You've hit it on the head. You've hit it on the head, Lance. I see a snag. I see a major snag. And because I'm dealing with it day to day, it's very, very difficult to get sponsors, even before COVID and even now, to invest money into the meetings and into athletes. Usain spoiled everybody. And I think, Sir Coe is doing his best. He understands, but he inherited a mess, Lance, and he's trying his best. I knew him as an athlete. I knew him as the vice president. I know him now as the president, and he's trying his best. But he inherited a mess at World Athletics, and he's trying. But he's in an era where it's really bad to get sponsorships, and I can't tell you. I don't want to be say that the sport is dead or dying, but it's hanging in there. It's really hanging in there. And even myself, I mean, I'm preparing myself for the future too. Every day I get up, Lance, I try to make myself independent of depending on any athlete from the time I started my company to now, you know, and I try to set an example and try to show them by my way, you know, how it is, because trust me, it's not going to be nice in the future. And I said it before the J3's election, and I'll say it now. I mean, I don't know what's going to really turn it around. Just look at the last Olympics. Look at what's going on now, you know. The world is changing, you know. Track and field is one of the most unprofessional of professional sports. I say that much, Lance.
Yeah, well, Cubie, always great talking to you here on the SportsMax Zone. We wish you the best with the group of athletes that you're now working with, and we hope that track and field can rise out of the difficult times and flourish in the future.
Thank you very much. Nice being on. Yeah,
Cubie Seegobin, who among his most outstanding clients would have been former world record holder from the United States, Harry Butch Reynolds, and the great sprint hurdler Ronaldo Neymar, and as you heard, Yohan Blake, the former 100-meter world champion, 2011 Daegu from Jamaica. Back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.